Last piece. We're going to talk about like understanding where all of my trig functions have certain values. So again, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the coordinate plane. And the first thing to remember on the coordinate plane is we got our quadrants. And just remember, this is quadrant 1. And quadrant 1 is where my x's are positive and my y's are positive. Quadrant 2 is where my x's are negative and my y's are positive. Quadrant 3 is going to again be where my x's are negative and my y's are positive. 3. And last but not least, quadrant 4 is where my x's are positive and my y's are negative. Again, this is stuff from back when you first started learning about the coordinate plane. That's why you learned about it. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to talk to you about R. R is that radius, that hypotenuse. I'm telling you, R is always going to be positive. I don't care what quadrant you're in, R is always positive. R is always positive. R is always positive. R is always positive. Okay, so now here comes the deal. We're going to look and see about the values of sine, cosine, and tangent. What I really want to know is I want to know what's going on with sine, cosine, and tangent in all of these. So I want to figure out sine's value, cosine's value, tangent's value. I want to do the same thing here. What is the sine of sine? What is the sine of cosine? What is the sine of tangent? Is it positive or is it negative? Sine, cosine, tangent. Sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, so what we're going to remember is we're going to remember all of these formulas right here. So it tells me sine is y over r, cosine is x over r, tangent is y over x. I'm just going to kind of scribble them over here so we know. We know for a fact, I'll scribble down here, that sine of theta is y over r, cosine of theta is x over r, and tangent of theta is y over x. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to see what happens in each one of these quadrants. So sine is y over r. Y is positive, r is positive. So a positive divided by a positive tells me that sine is positive. Cosine is x over r. X is positive, r is positive. A positive divided by a positive is a positive. And then for tangent, y over x. Y is positive, x is positive. Again, that's a positive divided by a positive. That tells me tangent is also positive. So if we notice this, everything in here is positive. So sine, cosine, tangent are all positive. And by extension, cosecant is positive, secant is positive, and cotangent is positive because all we're doing is just flipping that fraction over. So let's go through and look at the next ones. We talk about y over r. Y is positive, r is positive, so that's positive divided by positive. Sine is positive here. Cosine, x over r, negative divided by a positive. We got our first time of having a negative. And the last one is tangent, which is y over x. That's a positive divided by a negative, that's a negative. So if we look here in quadrant 2, only sine is positive, and by extension, cosecant is positive. Everything else is negative. So I'm going to go and finish it off. We're going to look at quadrant 3. Quadrant 3, y over r, positive. And this, oops, sorry, that's a mistake. I just missed that. That's my mistake. Y is actually negative here. My mistake. So y is negative here. Not sure what I was thinking. Okay, so sine, y over r, negative over positive. So that tells me a negative divided by a positive gives me sine being negative. Cosine. Cosine is x over r. Well, x is negative, r is positive. This is also negative. But y over x is going to give me a negative divided by a negative. Y is negative, x is negative. That's actually going to give me a positive. So that tells me in quadrant 3, tangent is positive, by extension, cotangent is positive. And we're going to kind of wrap up the loop. In quadrant 4, sine is y over r. Negative over positive. This gives me a negative value for sine. Cosine is going to give me a positive x over a positive r. That's going to give me a positive cosine. And tangent is going to be y over x. It's a negative over a positive. That's going to be a negative. So in quadrant 4, cosine is positive, and by extension secant. So if we look at this, when we go around the circle, what we're going to see is that everything, all of them are, so if we look at it, all of them are positive here. When we get to this one, just the sign, and by extension cosine, but just the sign is positive. This one, just the tangent is positive. And this last one, just the cosine is positive. So on this one, you got all sine, tan, and cosine. So the way you remember that is all seniors take calculus. Well, again, what this means is if we start off, this is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3, and this is quadrant 4. So in quadrant 1, everything is positive, sine, cosine, tangent. In the quadrant 2, only the sine is positive. In the quadrant 3, only the tangent is positive. And then in quadrant 4, only the cosine is positive. So if you remember the phrase, all seniors take calculus, that's how you're going to remember the signs of those. So we did some practices in class where we were saying like, hey, if I have an angle that's in a specific place, what can I say about the value? So for example, if I told you I had the following angle, let's say I had the angle 190 degrees. Where does 190 degrees fall? 190 degrees is in, if this is not up to 90, this is up to 180. 190 degrees is in quadrant 3. So if I asked you, what is the sine? What is the sine of 190 degrees? You would be able to tell me, well, Mr. Oliver, it's a negative number because sine is negative in quadrant 3. If I asked you for the cosine of 190, you could tell me that is a negative number, Mr. Oliver, because it's in quadrant 3. But if I asked you the tangent of 190, you would tell me, oh, that's a positive number because tangent is positive in quadrant 3. So we're going to do a little bit more practice on that on Thursday. On Thursday. Hopefully this helps kind of give some clarification and kind of give you a chance to review. Please use the reflection, ask me questions if you have any.